Oh dear. I don't know how people do it with this resolution.
Is that the max you can output it?
Well, it's VGA, so
Oh, yeah.
it's kind of limited as far as I can tell.
This thing can only do VGA.
Yeah, welcome to MBB.
It's the same in the physics department, but this looks much fancier than ours. So.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I mean, here, the only outlet we have goes through VGA. So no matter what, that's the bottleneck. Well, maybe by next time we'll get a super long HDMI cable that will just plug directly to. Be back. Pardon? No, maybe there's. Yeah, I suppose that's the case. Okay. Should probably delete this. People can sign in an Etherpad. Pardon?
What if we don't have Twitter?
That's okay. All right. We can get started. Yeah, 3:30. I'm just going to start off with, I guess, just going over a bit of the motivation of why I think this is useful. I mean, nowadays, I guess we can all be honest with ourselves. And like when we want to find out something about someone, we'll still stalk them online. We're going to look up at what information do they have online. I mean, if it's a PI, obviously you'll look at their website. If it's a colleague, you'll look maybe at LinkedIn profile. And these are obviously very useful tools, but it's nice to have a space that you have complete control over and that you can personalize to your liking, that you can post. And today we're going to look at how we create a blog, but you can think that there's many different things you can do with your own space online. And what's great is, well, previously, maybe 5-10 years ago, if you want to do this, there was a lot of I mean, there were sites like GeoCities, for those of you who remember, that allows you to create easy websites and put them online. And nowadays, you can create your own website easily without having to know what HTML, CSS, or not that much to get started. Or you don't need to know how to get your web host, how do you put your website online, and all this stuff, that technical knowledge that was previously necessary to host your own website. Nowadays, there's a lot of solutions out there that allow you to not need to have that technical knowledge, and GitHub Pages, which I'm going to be showing you today, allows you to do this. And within an hour today, even shorter, you'll all have a blog up and running with your own domain, which is pretty neat. So might as well get started. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna base ourselves off of a template just to hit the ground running, so we don't have to build everything from scratch. And so we are going. If you all go on GitHub, and we'll search for the repo Jekyll now. So you should have the first result there by Barry Clark. And so this repository is owned by this guy, Barry Clark. Now, obviously, this code is available online. It's open source. It's great. But obviously, we can't necessarily modify his code. He owns the repository. And we want to be able to modify it and to our own liking. And in Git, the way you can do this, if you have a repository and you want to create a version under your own control, that's called forking. And so here, what we're going to do is we're going to click the fork button at the bottom right, at the top right here. If it gives you a menu, just click your own username. And then what's going to do, it's going to basically take a carbon copy of that repository and put it under your username. Then what you'll have is you'll have this page, and it looks a lot like what you were just on, but you'll notice here, now you'll have your username here. Now you're the owner of the repository, and you can do whatever you want with it now. Now it indicates here that it was originally forked from Barry Clark, and so that there's still a link to where it originally came from, but now it's effectively yours, and you can do whatever you want with it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to rename it. So for GitHub Pages, to have a personal page, it needs to have a specific format. And that format is your username.github.io. So here, I probably want to click there. On the repo page, on the right-hand side, you'll have a bunch of tabs. And the last one with the gear is the settings page. So we're going to go here and rename it to your username. Don't write my username. That won't help. So whatever your username is on github.github.io. I'm going to rename this. Yes. So that's what this does is it allows GitHub to know, okay, this is the repository that's serving for your GitHub pages. Otherwise, it's just any other repository. And here it's basically, this is going to be your website. This is going to be your URL. Now, if you find it's too long, you can get your own URL online. If you have a nice short URL that has your username or your name, you can change it. You can make it such that it points to your GitHub page. So for instance, I have a URL that's bgrande.de, and I can point this URL to my GitHub page if I wanted to, and that can be configured. And the instructions are there online if you want to do this. But we're not gonna start buying domains names today. We're just gonna set up.
So this means that for each GitHub account, you have one website.
You can have one personal page, and you can have multiple project pages. So that's a good point bringing up. So what we're going to go do today is the main page for your account. But for each repository, you can have a project page. And the way you enable that is you have to have a branch called gh-pages, and it's basically going to be served the same way this is done. So that's SciProg is actually done that way. So, but for now, we're going to just use this personal page. And so here at the top, you should have your username / username.github.io. So just to make sure everyone's on track, can you please put up your blue stickies if you've reached this point, and yellow stickies if you are having issues? Yeah.
While you're at it, can you just quickly go over all these different things that we show here? I don't know if everybody is working with GitHub, we know, but
Like the different options here?
what is it quickly?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, for those of you who aren't familiar with GitHub, maybe one step back. For those of you who aren't familiar with Git, long story short, Git is just a way of keeping track of different versions of basically anything. It's meant though for code, plain text. You can be used for data even, but it's basically just think of it as, imagine if every time you click save on your Word document, it keeps a version. So a lot of us do this manually by calling thesis.doc, thesis2.doc, thesis2 final capitalized .doc. We often done this before, and it's less than ideal of a system. So Git, it tries and does this in a much more efficient way, especially for code, and allows you to track different changes individually as opposed to entire document changes. So, and GitHub is a website that allows you to host your code, your Git repository. So Git repository, just a bundle of, basically represents a project. You can think of it like that. And GitHub is a place where you can host this repository. And this website is an example of a repository. And so the main part of it is this homepage, which is all of your code. So you have all your files, your directories and files, and here you have a README describing what the repo is. Here, these commits are an example. Every time you click save, you have to commit, and we're going to get to that a little bit later. Then you have different sections here that are pull requests, which we might get around to later, which is basically, for instance, let's say I find a bug in Barry's code base. So let's say he has a bug in Jekyll now, and I want to fix it. I can't edit his repo directly. What I'll do is I'll fork his, fix it in my version, and then say, hey, here's a fix. You can choose whether or not to include it, integrate it into your code base, so that it's so you can fix it too. And there's a few other options. Like, for instance, graphs will show you the activity of this repository over time. So you can see the bulk of the activity was done seemingly last summer, and hasn't seen much activity since. You have each person that has contributed to this repository. Obviously, Barry's the main one with 260 commits, but you actually have a bunch of other people. And this morning, I randomly stumbled upon Dean Natali, who actually is a friend of mine here in Vancouver. I don't know why he committed to this repo, but hey, he made a commit, posted a fix. So, and you have different different ways of graphing and looking at this, different statistics for your repository. Okay.
So even when you work it yourself, the people who contributed to it before are still.
Yeah, because basically when we fork it, the entire past of this repository follows us. And so if I go in my commits, this is a repository I own. And if I look at the commits, it's a bunch of other people. Their work is still there and it's still attributed to them. But when we're going to do a few commits today, and our commits are going to just show up at the top, and it's going to be ours built on the work of everyone else. And that's the great thing about open source software. If as a tangent, open source software allows us to build off of each other's work. And obviously there's a huge number of benefits, efficiency, collaboration, allows also to iron out bugs and not reinvent the wheel every single time.
Are you notified of any changes to the original repository?
To the original repository, I do not think so, but I could. So if there's changes to my repository, there is, because it's currently watched. But if I want to be notified of changes of the original one, I can watch this. And there's different options. Here I can be, now I'm not watching. Now I can be watching everything. Or, okay, so if I submit an issue, then I'll be notified if there's any updates. But it can be completely like, I don't want to hear anything about this repo ever, or I want to be up to date with this repository because maybe I want to contribute going forward. Okay, so we're going to go back to our repository. And so next thing we're going to do is we're just going to edit here the description. So here underneath the title, you have this description. This isn't really relevant to us. So we're going to just click the edit button here, right underneath the title. And you can change the description to like my personal blog. And the website is going to be what we used before, prepended with HTTP. And then it'll be our username.github.io. And you can save that. Just personalizing a bit more of our repository. In fact, if you are to click this link, I'm going to open a new tab. Right now, my URL is live. So we're already getting somewhere with literally having to know what's going on behind the scenes in terms of web hosting, the HTML and CSS that's going on here. We just don't need to know any about that now. We're already up and running, but obviously I'd rather have a better title than your name on my website. So that's what we're going to go do next. So now this repository is hosted on GitHub. And the thing about Git is you can have multiple copies of this repository. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a local copy. So here on your repository page, at the bottom right below the settings, there's a HTTPS clone URL. So I'm going to get you to copy that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to move towards a bash shell. So if you can all open a bash shell, I have one here. Just do some cleaning. Oh no, whatever. Does everyone see my text here clearly? So what we're going to do is I'm going to create I'm going to go in my documents. Or you can go wherever you want, but then where you're going to run is you're going to run git clone followed by that URL. So git clone is basically download a copy of this repository. And if you click enter, it's going to download the repository. You shouldn't have to put your username because it's open source. But once you're going to try and push upload edits, you're going to have to probably put your username later on. So now if you do ls in my documents, you should see that you have your repository here. It's the name of the repository, which is the URL that we chose. So we're going to go in that repository now. I'm going to just put this up. And now you should see the exact same contents that you saw online, but in a repository. So if you've reached this point, please put up a blue sticky so I can know when to continue.
So while you were here,
yeah,
there's a master folder or branch. And
yeah.
So you're going to get to that.
So I won't go into too much into branches. The master branch is the default one, yeah. And for now we'll just commit on the master branch. If maybe a better approach, or is if ever you want to edit, you should branch off the branch and have a parallel code base, edit there and make sure that everything is working the way you expect it to, and then merge it back in. We won't deal with merges today. Maybe when we do another workshop on Git, it's definitely an important tool part of Git. Okay, so now that we're in our repository, we're going to start editing. But a little diversion. Who here was able to install Jekyll on their computer? So if you have Jekyll installed, what we're going to do is we can actually preview this website locally. So if you run Jekyll serve /watch and you press enter, if everything is configured properly on your computer, you should see this kind of output here. And what you can do is you can visit this URL that's printed, the server address. You can open this in your browser. So I'm just going to switch here to Chrome again and open a new tab. And basically what I have is the website, and it's entirely done on my computer. So what this is good for is previewing changes you're going to make. So whoever has Jekyll can do this, and can refresh this page as they make the edits going forward. If you don't have Gecko installed because it's no big deal. You'll see the changes whenever you push them to GitHub. So I'm going to leave this tab open for later. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to just personalize our website a bit. And the first I'm going to open, and I'm going to leave this run in the background. If I were to press Control C at the bottom, I'll stop the server from running. So I'm just going to open a new tab and return to my repository. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to edit the config file, which contains the bulk of the little configurations to personalize our website, including the title. So you can edit it in whatever way you can. You can go to this repository and open the file in the text editor. I'm going to just edit it in Emacs. So this is the contents of the configuration file, and there's only a few things that you can change, which makes it pretty easy. So first, your name. I'm going to change this to my actual name. My description. Let's see. What do I feel like today? No. I'm gonna go with the boring answer. Right? And here you have an option of putting an avatar. So you need a URL for this. For those of you who have an avatar on GitHub, you can use that. So to do so, you can go to your GitHub page, profile. Here you have this silly picture of me drinking carrot ginger apple juice, really good. You can copy right click on the image and copy the image URL. Obviously, if it's the default GitHub one, it's not that attractive. You can just for the experience, but if you have one, you can use this. Go back to your text and you can paste that URL here. I think this should work. I'm going to just remove this trailing, whatever comes after the question mark. All right, so you can save file. Since I have Gecko running, I can just go right away to the server here and refresh. Okay, since you change, okay. For those of you running Gecko, unfortunately, you're going to have to regenerate the website. So you have to press Control C and then relaunch Gecko. And hopefully this time I won't look I'm crazy. There you go. If you relaunch Gecko and you refresh your page, you should now see your name, your description, and if you chose to put it, your avatar on the website. So blue stickies, if you've reached this far, if you are still working on it, just put it down and let us know if you're having an issue. Oh, there's a specific bunch of versions you can install if you want. If you have Ruby, you can run the specific versions that GitHub runs by doing gem install GitHub -pages. And that installs all of the things that basically replicates what GitHub is running. Okay. So this is okay. Maybe try and run gem install GitHub -pages. So this installs all the dependencies that GitHub uses. So hopefully it'll get the best. It reproduces what GitHub is doing. If you're running installation, maybe it's because you're trying to install in your root. When you run it, go. And hopefully that'll work. Okay.
We're not supposed to install the root.
If you have, I don't know, I'm not familiar with Ruby. So if you ever run into the issue because Ruby is running a Ruby in your root, then you might have to run sudo, but run it without it first. All right, so I'll just All right. Just wait a few minutes so that that gets working. In your GitHub repository, if you're in Git status, you should have a list of files that were changed. Now, most of you should only have the first one if you use a text editor. If you use Emacs like me, you might have that second one. That second one is just a temporary file created by Emacs. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove it because I like my repositories to be clean. And if I rerun git status, most of you should probably get this, exactly this. So we modify config. What we're going to do is we're going to save it into our Git repository. And that's done in 2 steps. First, you add the file or files that you want to save to the staging area. And then you commit them. The reason we have these 2 steps is, let's say you edit 2 files, but you want to save one first and then the other. This allows you to do this. If you only had a commit, then you would be committing your entire repository every single time. But having a second 2 steps where you have a staging area, you can imagine a staging area as being, okay, you put things on the staging area, and then you take a snapshot. Then you take things off the stage, and then things get removed from the staging area automatically. Then you add new stuff to the staging area, snapshot. And each snapshot is the equivalent of a commit. So what we're going to do,
If you do a dash A, it just comes out.
exactly. But we're going to just do it the manual process. So here we're going to do is we're going to git add our configuration file. So this adds it to the staging area. So if I am to, and if you notice here, when I ran git status at the first, it says that the changes are not staged for commit. Now that I've added, if we rerun git status, we have a different screen. We have now the changes are to be committed. This file is now added to the staging area, and now we may proceed with committing. And the commit, the way you commit is git commit, and you have to add a message describing the commit. Otherwise, the only way to look at your commits is basically your SHA number, which is just a random number generated for each commit, and that's not descriptive. So what we want is we want to give this a descriptive message. And we honestly, what we can do is we can personalize configuration. Something as simple as this, a few words to describe what were the change here. And so now you can see having those 2 steps where you add files to the staging area. If you edited 10 files and you were to commit everything, come up with one message to describe everything might be troublesome. But if you have like, okay, this file I made this edit, this file I made this edit, you can commit separately and it makes it much more manageable. So we're going to git commit. So now it just tells us we have 1 file change, 3 insertions, 3 deletions, which is just the 3 lines that I've edited, my name, my description, and my avatar. So now all of these changes are still on my local computer. In fact, if I were to go on my website here, it's still the default layout. And that's because we haven't uploaded our changes yet to GitHub. So to do this, we do git push. This is basically like here, GitHub, just take all of the edits that I've done since last time. So if you run a git push, you might have to put your username and password for GitHub. I don't, because I have my SSH keys set up. If you don't want to have to put your username and password every time, set up your SSH keys. And I think I included a link in the lesson notes to do this. It's really great for convenience. So I'm going to just go around and make sure everyone's up to date. And then we'll continue. Oh, yeah, okay. I think it still works. It's just because there's a change in GitHub 3.0. Oh, it's because you probably set it using SSH keys as opposed to HTTP. Yes. Oh yeah, I did pull through. Yes. Yeah. So do you know how to set up your SSH keys? Yeah. If you can do that quickly, it's probably easier thing than to switch to HTTP. Yes. Okay. Is everything all right here?
Yeah.
on your under your personal.
Yeah, I had to host a project on page here, so I.
Okay, so actually, for you, you can actually fix this. So if you copy that SSU problem, because that's the if you copy that.
Yeah, that's what I've done. It's on the back. It's just not.
But did you if you go into config, you can paste that somewhere and it'll fix everything. So if you open the configuration file and you scroll down. No, configure more. I think. Okay. Base URL. That's the one.
Yeah.
So you want to add slash as if you make sure you have the capitalization, and that should fix it. So the reason that's not working is that the CSS is not being can be found.
Okay.
Yes.
Question, if you do several commits before a push,
Yes.
then the push does it do everything in order?
Everything, because every commit is dependent on another commit. So that dependency, those dependencies are kept.
One other thing, I've done this SSH problem,
Yeah.
so I just do git push now.
Yeah.
But I don't remember what I did a long time ago.
Yeah, so basically setting up your SSH keys is just because when you push to this repository, you own it. And you have to prove to GitHub that you actually have permission to edit the file. So an easy way is to just put your username and password, but I'm lazy, so I don't like to have to do that. So another way is you can say, okay, this computer is authorized to do changes, or this account on this computer. And so each computer, you can generate what we call an SSH key. And what you have is you have a private one and a public one. So there's this pair of keys, and you can paste the public one on GitHub. And now GitHub is like, okay, if I have any requests, any pushes coming from this computer, this machine, I can trust it that it is who you think it is. Because you had to manually say that you can access these. There's a link in the lesson notes, I believe, on how to do this. And I recommend doing it because who likes typing their username and password every single time you push? So there's also alternate ways, I think, with you can use whatever your operating system's keychain can also store, I think, some information if it's configured properly. I use SSH keys just for simplicity. So has everyone been able to do the git push? Nicholas is not giving you trouble a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess an alternate way is you can, I don't know off the top of my head how to switch from SSH to HTTPS. So you can reclone it and just copy paste the config file and then push that way. Okay, so now we pushed. If you were to go to our website and refresh, voila, our changes are now live on the internet. And so we technically now have a blog within a half an hour of starting this. And so what we're going to do next is actually add a bit of stuff to our repository because our blogs because it's a bit boring right now. And in fact, that's going to be our first challenge problem. It's to go, if you look at your repository, and you'll find that there's a posts _posts directory. You'll find that there's a markdown file in there. So the challenge problem is to edit this so that you create your first blog post. So personalize it to whatever you want your first blog post to be. It can be something as boring as, hey, this is my first blog post, hello world. Or you can make it a bit more sophisticated than that. I probably won't. So, but do whatever you want, and we'll, and also add, commit, and push the changes to GitHub. And once you've done that, put up your blue sticky. Until then, put all your stickies down, and we will get back to this later.
So, yeah, the layout is post now, but what kind of other layouts?
Okay, so right now, so I chose this one for simplicity, but there are a number of different layouts. So actually, if you look at the description of the repository, which is included in your own, if you scroll in the README, at the very bottom, there is, I just noticed this before, there's these other forkable themes. So actually, Jekyll has a bunch of themes. I mean, GitHub Pages kind of popularized it even more so. And so there's actually even a website called geckothemes.org. It has tons of these. There's many pages of them. So any of them could have done. I just went with the simplest option for setup. So there's a bunch of these two are pretty good. And honestly, it's a question of a personal preference. So this is one of them, for instance. Obviously, they're all doing tons on Gecko, so hide, pool, because people are creative like that. So you get the idea. So there's definitely tons of options out there.
So the question is, if I change the file I'm editing now and change the layout from post to something, what happens?
Oh, underscore posts, or you mean the post?
Yeah, so in the markdown file.
Yeah.
For underscore post, the first thing that you can do is layout colon post.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. No, do not change that.
Well, I want to know what are the options.
So here, what that specifies is specifies the layout, and right now there's only 3 here: default, page, and post. So I assume that the about page is a page layout, and it's its own single thing, while a post has a different layout. So sorry, I completely didn't answer your question. It was a nice tangent though, and introducing the other options of Jekyll.
So how do you change your theme?
So
Or is it?
there's no way, once you set this up, there's no easy way, I guess. Well, you can drop in and replace the contents, like the different CSS files.
Yeah.
There's no beyond this point, there's no easy way. But like you can easily just take all of your posts, move them to another theme, and edit its own configuration file to your liking. All right, so make sure you put up blue sticky notes if you wrote your first blog post. And we'll. Did you just push it?
Yes. It takes a few minutes for it to go live sometimes. So just wait. If within 5 minutes it has. Oh, there it goes. Okay, there you go. Yeah. Oh, thanks. I think how's mine has the same issue, but I'm on it. Okay. Could you go back and see? So okay, so for some reason here, your latest commit is still his. So your commit never made it to GitHub. So what's going on? So can you write git status? Let's see what's going on. Okay, git log. Yeah, git log. So that just gives you a list of the different commits. Okay, so yours is there. Okay. Press Q. Out there. I'll go back to the website. Just refresh this image. Okay. It's live now. Yeah, go to your website and refresh. Yeah, go to that one and refresh. Push refresh.
Is
Okay,
this
so
right?
your username is K2006. Yeah, that should work.
I put an image on there from the internet, so I'll do that.
Okay, maybe the configuration is throwing an error. That could be it. Could you copy that URL? Yeah, so go back to get that. We'll get that image when we get it properly. There might be an error. So just visit that URL and Chrome. Because I guess if we are able to preview it locally, okay, so we're going to view image, and then that's the link you're going to want. I don't know how it's going to show up though, because it's a square avatar and this is rectangular. So if you can put the link, I know it should work, but it might be like the middle, like it might be Barb's chin that's going to show up as opposed to the head. So For that, you're just gonna crop it as a square later on.
You're welcome. How's everything? How's everyone going? Everyone's published their first blog post. How's your setup going? Making progress? It's working, right? Okay, good. All right. It's time for me to play catch up. So I'm going to go create my first lame blog post. So I'm going to just rename it, first of all, to something else, to something that makes sense. So today we're the 1st of September, and I'm going to just call this a riveting first blog post. And I will open this in my text editor and change it. So if I run git status, it's going to tell me that I've deleted a file. If you've renamed your file, it's going to give you something like this, where it says you deleted this file, oh, and you have a new file. So for Git, that's how it's done internally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the entire, I'm going to just go up to my one directory. This is my root. I'm going to add the entire posts directory to my staging area, because that will include both the file that got deleted and the file that got created. And I'm going to commit this with like wrote first blog post. That's going to be my message. It's showing, okay, 2 files were changed. 10 lines were deleted in one file. Another file was created with only 6 lines. And then I'm going to git push. And up it goes to GitHub. Actually, here, if I look at, I still have Jekyll running. So if I were to visit this URL, I can preview my blog post locally. So it's here online, or online on my computer locally. And in a matter of minutes, you should be able to see it online using your URL. So now we have our first blog post online. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the about page. Because obviously this is probably where people are going to go to. If they're looking you up, they're probably going to like, oh, I want to know a bit more about this person. Obviously that's the about page. And right now, this isn't very useful. So we're going to, so second challenge problem, go ahead and change the about page to something that describes you a bit better. You can describe what you do for a living, things that you like, things you don't like, what you ate last night, whatever you want. And the about page is in the root of the repository, not in posts. And here, Alireza, you see here the layout of this page.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. So on that, actually, so talking about that. So learning about HTML and CSS, obviously I'm not touching any of that today because that's another workshop, many workshops. The way I learned HTML and CSS was just finding a template, find something that works, and then mess with it, breaking it, making it work again, and just basically tweak, basically build on the work off of the work of others, and you'll soon get an intuitive understanding of how HTML and CSS works. And so getting this website up and running is the first step. You have a nice template, you have your website, and especially if you have Jekyll installed locally, you can then have the copy of the website on your computer, mess with it, make changes, change colors, change the layout, change the text size, change the font. There's so many things you can change and preview it locally. And obviously, most of the time, you're going to probably break something because you're not familiar with HTML and CSS, and that's fine. And the great thing about GitHub is you can keep track of the versions that worked and then try new things and then realize, those things didn't work. Okay, revert back to what the last point that did work. So this is something that's allowed in Git with And like if you just use save in Word, it's a much annoying thing. It's much more annoying to go back to the version that, let's say you deleted a paragraph and then you realize, oh, there was that one sentence I wrote in that paragraph that was really good, and you want to go get it back. Control Z can only get you so far, and you might not get so lucky. So GitHub allows you to basically mess around, and there's features of Git that make it even easier. So you can have branches. So you have two basically versions of your website running or existing. One that's the stable version, and then another one that's the one you're having fun with. So you can keep them completely separate, and only when you're ready you can merge them together and then update your actual website online. But all of this we can we'll view in another workshop. So here I'm going to update my about page. So one thing is, let's say if you're an academic, you can have a Google Scholar page and post that link here. Now if you're not familiar with Markdown, that's fine. It's a really easy syntax to learn. So for instance, this is how you were to create a link. You can look at the one at the bottom if you were to inspire yourself. But there's a lot of things you can do in Markdown. And it's basically just a human readable format to do this kind of text editing and putting stuff online. And then here I'm going to just change my email to something. Voila. Save this. I'll just change the title to about me because I'm narcissistic. All right. So if I go to my repo, git status, we have the one event that was changed, the one file that was changed. And that reminds me, if I go check my local version, and I check about, there it is. My description is there. I'm going to update this later because this is lame. So I'm going to add the about page to the staging area, and again, commit, and then git push. And within a matter of minutes, that about page is going to be live on the internet. All right, so we have 50 minutes left. I had another challenge problem, which is just to play around with Markdown, but I don't think that's very useful. I just maybe want to go over the things you can do in Markdown. Whoops, that was. And so Markdown allows you to create a document with different headings, but all in plain text. So some of the things you can do in Markdown is write paragraphs, which is just simple. The headings basically are any line that's preceded with a hash sign is a heading. The number of hash signs is the heading level. So the main heading is going to be the simple one hash, then have a second heading up to, and you can have many headings. So you can kind of structure your blog post, for instance, more accordingly. You can have block quotes, which is probably similar to what you've seen in emails, for instance. You can style text as being italic or bold. using either double star asterisk or double asterisk.
But this is syntax when you're writing in what kind of font is that?
This is called Markdown. This is the format Markdown. So your blog post, anything that's .md, that's a Markdown file, and it's basically a plain text file. But there's certain rules. This website shows you some of them, and don't try to remember all of them all at once. I Google them all the time. So for instance, if you want lists, you can do like asterisks or dashes. Ordered lists, you just use numbers. Nested lists. I think that's really useful is to have code formatting. So if you write a piece of code, so what I'm going to do is, for instance, I'm going to go and edit my first blog post. I'm going to add a code block because why not? It's going to be Python code. And I'm going to just print hello world. Or I'm going to just message is going to be this and then print message, for instance. So if I were to go to my website preview, it's my home page, fresh. What you have is you have code that's formatted using a pre-formatted text, so it's monospace font, and you have syntax highlighting. So this uses an underlying library that knows several languages. In this case, it knows Python. It knows that print is a keyword in Python. It knows strings, and strings are delimited, like in most languages, by quotes or double quotes. And here, where you have the hello world that's in teal, which just represents a string literal. And so this is just one thing, one of many things you can do in Markdown, and you can get these links online. There's several things you can do. The only annoying thing is there are some more advanced features that will vary from place to place, and just be wary of that. So as for our repos, I think we're all up and running. I'm going to just show you a few things until the end. So one thing is our amazing website is actually runs on GitHub Pages. So I just want to kind of show you like the power of what you can achieve using GitHub Pages. And so this website that has all of the information, our events that get updated basically as we put posts in our repository. All this is done using GitHub Pages. Here you have information about how to get notified about upcoming events. This is information about our calendar. So for instance, we have a calendar of all of our events. So next week, we don't seem to have an event because Monday is Labor Day. Today, this is ours today. And then we have our studio the week after. Then you have co-working session. And here we have Chris giving us a nice workshop on Pro. I'm looking forward to that because I haven't learned Pro yet, and I'm long overdue to at least get familiar with it, especially to get to use those Pro one-liners that everyone brags about that I can't really do in Python. So this is obviously not Google GitHub Pages, but basically you can have GitHub Pages that host a lot of this. Here we have, for instance, all of our beautiful faces at the bottom. If you want to be added to this, let us know. This is not just organizers. This is everyone who's part of this community. And so if you haven't been added to this, email us. We just need a few things from you, and we can easily add it to the list of people on this website. So if you were to, the actual repository that's powering this, actually right here. This is the repository that's powering the website. And you probably know some of similar things, posts, layouts, includes. There's a bunch more stuff here because it's a more complicated website. So here in our post, we have all of our sessions that we have coming up. So this is the one that you're going through today. So one thing that we want to make, and we use the issues, which is another feature available on GitHub, to kind of keep track of different conversations going on. So you've probably seen this page if you've come here, where we just show all the different information related to this workshop. And one thing if ever you want to suggest an event, if there's something you would like to learn, we obviously we encourage people to come and tell us what they want to learn about, because That's you are who we want to. We are all part of this group together. And so on our website, I'm gonna just jump back here. If you go to our events, you have the different events that are coming up, but we also have a link, suggest an event. And that basically just takes you directly to our issues and just raise a new issue and post something, post a suggestion that's something you want to learn. Funny story, our first workshop, someone commented, is there going to be a live screencast? We hadn't even considered doing that at all. And just because of that one person who just innocently asked a question, we've been live screencasting every single workshop we've had so far. Obviously, pending permission of whoever is leading the workshop. And so this just comes to show that we actually do listen, and we want to make this as best as possible for the community here at SFU of scientific programmers. So please do not feel shy of asking for an event. It's this repository is open, and these issues are open for a reason. What time is it?
Do you think you can quickly go over merging this description how to merge these ports?
Sure.
If there is nothing else.
Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna close this merging.
You want to clone another one and merge it?
So what okay, here's one thing that you have to keep in mind you should be mindful of. So let's say here I have my repository. I have the latest commit, which is where I approve the page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a post manually using the GitHub interface. So actually for this, I'm going to have to just copy because I don't know this by heart. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, there. Second blog post. Second blog post is now online. And I'm just gonna commit this. No, and name it. So 2015-09-1. So here we have the second blog post. And let's say here, I edit the about page again, and I want to add here, I don't know. I want to be recursive, and I want to add a link to my website from my website. Stupid, don't do this, but this is just to show you. So here, what I have is, why is that modified? Oh, wait. Don't do this. Just okay. So here I modify my about page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add my about page and commit. Now what I'm going to git push. Now Git is going to complain. Because what's going on here is there is a commit on GitHub that I don't have. And I'm trying to update GitHub, but I don't know the entire story because there's some change on GitHub that I don't have. And GitHub is going to complain here. So it says that failed to push something. And here it obviously describes it, although these messages aren't always super understandable. But here it says that there were some changes on the remote, which is GitHub, that weren't locally. Now in this case, we're lucky because two separate files were edited. So merging is trivial. So what we need to do is a git pull. So to download data, first you clone it, and then going forward, you have to do git pull. So git pull is going to download the change. So in this case, it's going to download the post, the second post I created. Now here's asking me to create a message for the merge. So this is a merge. So I'm just going to leave it as the default. and then I can git push, and hopefully that will not give me any grief, and it worked. So that's a merge. And GitHub is usually pretty good at figuring out how to do merges automatically. If two files are edited, it's pretty easy to do the merge automatically. If the same file is edited, then it depends. If the two complete separate lines that were edited, then it might be fine. Now, if the same line is edited two different ways, then GitHub is going to be, look, you have to deal with this. I don't know how to do this automatically, and so you have to go in and choose which edits you want to keep, which ones you have to discard, and then you do another commit. And so this is just to show you. So often, good practice: git pull, then git push. Do that in that order. Unless you're the only person editing the repository, usually it's not as necessary. And if you're always doing edits on your local computer, then it's not as necessary. But this just comes to show that Git can be used. It's powerful to handle these kinds of situations. If you've ever had to merge two Word files, you probably know that this is a lot easier than merging two Word files. There is a merge functionality in Word, apparently. I haven't used it much, but it is there. But I'm pretty sure it's annoying because Word. So, any other questions before we wrap up?
Just on the SciProc website.
Yeah.
Is that hosted separately so that you can get the nice domain name?
No, so the domain name was my impulse to buy.
So you actually bought the domain.
So I bought the domain name, and setting up a domain name is simple. You buy it. A domain name is about sometimes $10 a year, so it's not that expensive. And then what you need to do is for the domain name, you have to forward it to GitHub, and then the only change you need to do in the repository is there's a file called CNAME, capitalize, and you just have to add the website here.
So what prevents you from just adding some random person's website to that?
So first of all, that website has to be forwarded to GitHub. So websites don't do this usually. And secondly, only one person can do this. So actually, when I was writing this lesson, I was using another template, and their CNAME wasn't empty. So if you look at if we go to the repository, there's a CNAME file, but you'll find that there was a commit about a year ago where they removed everything from the CNAME file. And so before it used to have jekyllnow.com. But what happens is whenever you fork the repository, you get an email saying someone already has this domain name, change it. And so that was my first thing when I had the previous version of the lesson. The first step was to remove the CNAME or empty it. But then I found this template, and it's a lot cleaner and easier to set up. And obviously they went through this procedure as well. If you do get a personalized domain name, it's easy to set up. I did it for SciProc. You can do it for this. I'm probably going to do it myself for my own blog so that I can have my nice short bgrand.de as my domain name. It's really easy to set up. Any other questions? All right. So everyone is that much more online right now just through this workshop. So hopefully your blog will not be my first blog post forever, as many blogs do end up having that fate. Things you can blog about are just false results or like negative results that you have in science, or if you spend a bunch of time trying to figure something out in Python, in R, in Fortran, you find like this clever solution to something, just post the code either on GitHub, or you can annotate it a bit better, maybe make a blog post out of it, and just show that you're somewhat active. And it can make a difference whenever someone is looking you up online and like, oh, this person is active on their blog. It doesn't need to be a post every week, but like a post every month or two, like can show that you're active in the field. And obviously it's good for other people in the community that can benefit from your hard work. Because I'm all for collaboration, because I use Stack Overflow every single day. So thank you to those people. And if I can contribute to the internet and to other people, might as well. All right. I think that's a wrap. Thanks all for coming. So as usual, sticky notes for those of you who aren't familiar with it. If you can, and I would encourage it. Leave pieces of feedback on them. The blue sticky note, leave a good something you enjoyed from the workshop, and on a yellow sticky note, some piece of constructive criticism, whether about the way I gave the workshop, about the way we organize workshops in general. If there's something you'd like to see improve, please. Constructive feedback is more than welcome, and we do take this to heart, and we love to get any ideas that you have to improve going forward. So don't be shy.
I did actually have a couple of extra questions.
Yeah, sure.
So is this just limited to blogs, or could you build a full-blown web page?
You can basically build a. I mean, Cyprog is an example of that. It's not like super. It's a one-page website, so it's not too complicated. But there are definitely people who do go crazy. I know this guy has websites where he has a post, a blog, but he also has a page for talks. He has a page for consulting. So basically, you can say like it's kind of limitless. You can find a theme that works. I mean, today didn't take that much time, so you don't need to stick to this theme, which is super simple. For those of you who missed it before, if you just go on your own repository and scroll at the bottom, there's a list of other forkable themes. So if you just look at them, some of them have nicer, less minimalist designs. This one's really clean and minimalist, and then others will allow. This one doesn't have a link. Let's see the link out there. This one's very simple. But yeah, you definitely have the power of creating websites that can be pretty sophisticated. I guess this is an example of that. Yeah, so I mean, this is just an example of. I mean, again, it's built around the blog, but you don't need to. You can have different. You can just have a bunch of different pages. You can have, an about page, talks page. So I guess one thing you can do is if you give talks or give posters at a presentation, why not put it on Figshare or SlideShare and then put it on your blog and show that like people can go back to it if they search it online. I think people don't do that enough. If we go to a conference, we can maybe snap a picture of a poster. That's what we often do, but it'd be great if people just had the habit of just posting their posters online. Why not? So a blog could be a great place. And again, it's a nice central location. When people Google your name, like, oh, this guy posted a bunch of slides online and stuff. So yeah, so there's definitely more you can do. You can build off of a template. You can start from scratch, although that's probably a bit more intimidating if you're not familiar with Jekyll, HTML, and CSS, and JavaScript.
The other question I had is,
Yeah.
Is it limited to displaying static content, or could you have it do AJAX calls from JavaScript?
Oh, it's so in fact, Jekyll. So if you look at, we're going to dive into a bit to what powers this. But if you look at a layout, and you look at post, what it basically is you have these placeholders here.
Is that Ember?
Pardon?
Is that Ember?
The templating?
Yeah.
No, it's Liquid, which is by Shopify. So basically, it is dynamically generated. So whenever you run Gecko serve, it generates all the static pages and then serves that. JavaScript is possible. You can integrate. I'm sure that you can integrate JavaScript. I wouldn't be surprised if this website. Maybe this one doesn't because it's really simple. No, this one I think just has CSS, but I can't imagine it now. There shouldn't be a problem with having JavaScript.
Thank you.
No worries. All right. Thanks for coming, everyone. Thanks. Yeah, I know, right? Super easy. It's almost too easy. All right, that's a wrap.